something else I was going to. Oh no, I was just going to mention. You brought up Mark Victor Hansen. He's the guy who connected us.
Yeah.
I had used him for just recently before you and I got connected. I'd hired him to do a corporate event
Okay.
and talked about the book, and he said, "You're looking for call my guy, call my guy." And I called you, and you were at a political organizing event, and you stepped outside to when you
I was
realized we were
probably
in.
at a Green Party thing because I think that was right around the time. I think that was right around the time when that would have been Bush versus Kerry,
Yep.
2004 presidential election. I think maybe it was maybe probably before that. It's probably around the Iraq War. Probably around the war thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The only reason you stepped out was because we had such a big time zone difference. You were going to call me when it was over, and I said, "Dude, I'll be asleep for a couple
Right,
of
'cause I was
hours
in
by the time
California. It
that's
was
over."
3 hours. Yeah.
Now we only have an hour. So speaking of Mark and other interesting people,
Yes.
tell us who some of your favorite ghostwriting clients have been. Some intriguing ghostwriting clients or projects.
It's not the clients so much. Well, I guess it in a way it is the clients. It's the clients or the projects. I mean, it's been interesting. I just finished a book. Literally just put the first draft to bed a week ago Monday, which was just this week, just this past Monday or Sunday, I guess. Technically, it was Monday. It was about 12:30 in the morning. Um, for Shawnee O'Neill, who's Shaquille O'Neal's ex-wife, and it was a parenting book. Everybody, whenever I've told people that, they think, "Ooh, it's going to be a tell-all about Shaquille." No, it's not, because they're divorced. But she told me when we first started working on the project, she said, I'm not gonna trash talk my ex-husband because he's my children's father. So I'm not going to do that. So I respect her for that. But it's been really interesting getting a look inside like the world of reality TV because she has this big show called Basketball Wives, and that's been really interesting. But also looking at the stuff that there's a lot that's not going to go into the book about life in the NBA,
Mhm.
and ladies in the NBA and side pieces in the NBA, things like that. Yeah. Um, but I get asked that question a lot about favorite projects, and I probably have two, which is funny because there couldn't be more different. The first was a book called Blindsided that came out back in 2009 with St. Martin's Press. And it was about a gentleman who unfortunately passed away quite a long time ago, named Jim Cole, who was a self-taught grizzly bear naturalist. And it was this. You remember the book, right?
Yeah, I do. I love that book.
Yeah, and that was and it was about him surviving his second grizzly bear mauling. Now, the fact that you've gotten mauled twice means you might want to reevaluate your life a little bit. But he jumped right back in. He didn't die because of a grizzly bear attack. I think he died in his sleep of a cardiac arrhythmia. But which is an odd way to go. He probably would have rather gone by via grizzly.
Probably.
But I learning about him and such a unique guy. And if we went into Yellowstone to the place where he was attacked and followed his path into the actual spot where he was attacked and followed his route as he got himself out when he couldn't see. I went and met his doctors, met the couple who rescued him. That was fascinating. And then on the other end, I did a book that came out with Amplify Press that's published Swipe called Blindsided. Or sorry, that's one called Brainwashed. Sorry, Brainwashed. I'm fond of one-word titles that start with B, apparently. And that was with a former NFL player named Merrill Hodge, who was a running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers primarily. And it's a book about chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, which is has affected so many athletes, not just in football, but in boxing and other sports. And that was my favorite kind of writing, honestly, which is investigative journalism.
Yeah,
That book, I like to say, that book was the toughest job I ever loved because it kicked my butt.
I bet.
There was so much research and so many interviews and so much digging I had to do. And I had tons of work that I did that got booted by legal because it was deemed too legally risky
Yeah.
for the publisher. But I know, and I'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning at my office at WeWork, going through citations. For the back, for the end notes, must have been 220 citations in that book. But it was a hell of a book, and it's still out there. and it got, it was controversial because it claimed that CTE was based on bad research. Now some of that research has been retracted. So, but that's meaty. That's the kind of stuff I can really sink my teeth into, and I really enjoy that kind of work that feels like it's got some gravitas to it.
Speaking of books and brains, Tim's the co-author of the soon-to-be-released book called Swipe, The Science of Why We Don't Finish What We Start. Did I get the subtitle right?
Close. Science behind what don't finish what we start, but yeah.
Not bad for me. Um, and a good friend, and excited to be coming back to Amelia Island to be working with indie authors at an intensive workshop we'll be conducting on February 16th and 17th. Let me see, I have some more notes here. Believe this? I have notes to talk to you normally because we go on for hours, and you're one of the few people I'll talk to on the phone, by the way. I generally don't do phone.
Really, I'm flattered. Well, we should probably pivot to some of the stuff that I might talk about in the workshop. Don't you think?
You think?
Yeah,
All
maybe.
right.
We got about another less than 30 minutes to go, so let's pivot to that.
So,
You do what you want. You're in charge here, so.
yeah, right. Hanging out with you, I'm never in charge. I just sort of buckle up and go along for the ride. Uh, so, yeah, what, you're going to have a wide range of people from beginners who are really nervous about putting themselves out there as wanting to be writers,
Yeah.
to people with multiply published award-winning books. Um, so one of the big pieces is we are going to talk. I've rearranged the schedule so you can talk more about why we don't finish what we start, because that's really important. I mean, perseverance is such a huge thing with getting your book finished, with getting your website up, with all those various pieces that go along with being an indie. Um, I'm going to start with the hard question first.
Go for it.
What are some of the fantasies or delusions that writers have that just get them stuck and keep them from finishing what they start?
I think there's a lot. One of the biggest ones that I see, and we saw this a lot when we were doing research for Swipe, is, and it doesn't just apply to writing, it applies to everything, is this myth of momentum. I call it the momentum myth. And it's that I have to proceed at a steady pace and I can't stop. And if I stop, then I may as well tear it up and start over again. So, I mean, you see it a lot with workouts and all kinds of things where you're forced by circumstances to take a break. You get sick, or like me, I got really bad tendonitis in my knee, and I had to stop my workout program for a while because it was just too painful to move. My doctor told me, it's like, you need to give this like 3 or 4 weeks of rest. Okay, well, that doesn't mean I go back to square one. It means I'm going to lose some progress, but I'm not going to lose it all. And I think people, so writers in particular, we all start new projects, especially with this excitement. And I literally in the book call it page one energy.
Yeah.
We start with this energy, and we're riding the bike downhill. It's a new project. We're excited, and at some point, it's around page 50, somewhere in that range. The energy goes, and we go, okay, I just spent my initial idea, created my initial character, whatever it is, and now I'm on the plateau and hit the bottom of the hill. And look, now I got to climb the hill in front of me. And we stop. And we might stop because we don't know what to do next. And if you're writing, that's a very good reason. Okay, I'm going to stop and plan my story out. But I find a lot of writers feel like that if they stop, because they need to outline, they need a character sketch, whatever it is, that somehow invalidates what they've done. That they have to go in this unbroken stretch, like Jack Kerouac writing On the Road. And obviously that's not true. I think what happens is we stop, we lose that white hot energy, and then what happens? The self-doubt starts to creep in. And if we don't have a method to deal with the self-doubt, then we digital, virtually, because no longer are we crumpling up paper and throwing it into the trash, but we virtually do that. We digitally do that. We just delete,
Sure.
oh, this is garbage. I'm going to start over again. And we never get there because we're always starting over again from scratch. So that's one of the biggest, is that momentum myth, that I have to have momentum and keep the momentum going. No, it's perfectly valid to go in fits and starts, as long as you don't stop for good. And as long as you don't go back to square one.
That makes a lot of sense, that you don't go back to square one when you take a break necessarily. And sometimes looking at those things with fresh eyes, said the woman with a drawer full of things that need fresh eyes, I see them differently. And pieces I was struggling with fall into place, and I know what I'm going to do. Sometimes that break is really, really valuable.